What's up, friends? It is Thursday at Barely Qualified Picks, and that means we are back at you with our Week 8 NFL picks. We've also got our first power rankings for you. We know that lots of different blogs and commentators do power rankings. We wanted to bring you a new flavor on power rankings, and so we're going to look at them through two lenses. First, how a team is playing over the last several weeks. Where are you trending right now? And then, how confident are we in their ability to actually win the Super Bowl, to get healthier, to add pieces, to get through the rest of their schedule and get a good seed? We'll talk about all of that across 4 different tiers. Now, after that, we're going to get into our Uncle Denny's Any Given Sunday Hunches of the Week, where we're coming off a 2-1 week that puts us 5-1 on the season. And then we will finish up with our Around the World competition with Gerald the Coin. Let's dive into the power rankings. Without further ado, the first tier of our power rankings, that S tier of teams, is the legitimate contenders tier. And there are 4 teams here that we believe have the health, the seeding and positioning, and the firepower to win the Super Bowl. 2 of them have already done it, Kansas City and Philly, and 2 of them, Detroit and Buffalo, are hopeful to do it for the first time. And the 2 hopefuls, of course, just happen to be 2 of the most tortured fan bases in the NFL. Go figure that. To be honest, we struggled with Buffalo. In our opinion, they are a number 1 wide receiver short of what we think they really need to win it all. But we've been wrong before, and we do believe in Josh Allen. Call us crazy, but if we were putting money on anyone in this group today, it would have to be the Chiefs. Give us the chalk, even at 4-3. The Chiefs look well positioned to go on a massive run, win every game that remains on their schedule, and get that 1 seed. And if they do, we'll be looking back laughing at how they started the season so slowly and yet are in peak Chiefs condition for another Super Bowl run. If we're betting a second team in this group, even though we really like the Lions in a vacuum as a Super Bowl contender, we would have to bet the Eagles. The Chiefs are 5-1 to win the Super Bowl. They have the shortest odds of anyone. But then they're followed by the Lions at 6-1 and the Bills at 7.5-1. The Eagles, our 4th team in this group, are 11-1 to win the Super Bowl. Just to remind everyone, they just won the Super Bowl. And I know that it's hard to repeat, but it does happen. And they're essentially the same team. And yes, there's some consternation and noise around A.J. Brown, and Jalen Carter doesn't seem to play every week. The Eagles are fine. They're totally fine. They're going to make the playoffs. And if they make the playoffs, there's no reason they can't grind out 4 straight wins, or 3 if they win the division, which I expect they will do, and get a bye, which I expect they can do. Maybe not will, but can. So give me the Eagles at 11-1 rather than the Lions at almost half the odds at 6-1. It just doesn't feel like there's great value for the Lions right now. As we move into our second tier, the potential contenders, look, we aren't entirely sold on this thicket of very talented teams yet. But we certainly get the optimism emanating from each of these fan bases. And if the arrow consistently trends up over the next few weeks, any one of these teams could level up to the legitimate contender tier. There are a lot of interesting options if you're betting this tier today. We've got the Bucks and Niners, 5-6. We've got the Colts and Broncos, 7-8. We've got the Rams and Seahawks rounding out the top 10, and then the Packers and Patriots at 11-12. And the odds vary significantly. The Packers, our 11th team in the power rankings, have the shortest odds at plus 800. The Patriots, our 12th seeded team, have the longest odds at plus 3,000. Well, for our money, we would bet the Seahawks, but we've already done that. So we'll set the Seahawks aside for now. And we're going to set our fandom aside with that and bet the Niners at plus 1,900. Look, I said last week, Fred Warner, God bless him, could be the straw that broke the 49ers' backs, a team that has already dealt with more injuries than anybody, losing the heart and soul of that defense. How do you come back from that and keep playing at the level the Niners defense is accustomed to playing at? Well, damn it, they did it. They defeated Atlanta 20-10 at home, and the defense showed up. It played so well. this is a team that might not only be able to weather the Fred Warner storm, but they might now have a win it all for Warner energy that could be incredibly powerful. And they have a coaching staff that has gotten there. There's no reason they can't grind out 3 to 4 wins in the postseason and win the Super Bowl. We also think the Colts and the Rams have appeal. The Colts feel unstoppable. In a way, it kind of feels like 1999 and the St. Louis Rams, the greatest show on turf. Trent Green goes down, Kurt Warner steps in. The stories are about how he was begging groceries at a grocery store, and yet the Rams put up huge numbers week after week after week, and eventually people stopped saying, yeah, but it's the Rams, right? Eventually this is going to end, and they started saying, wow, they could really win the Super Bowl. And win the Super Bowl they did over the Tennessee Titans. The Colts could do the exact same thing. They could be really, really real. They have tons of talent, got a great running game, a great offensive line. Their defense is doing great things for them. I just want to see a little bit more. And that's why they're in the potential contender and not the legitimate contender range. But at plus 1,100, they might be worth a flyer right now. And I will say, if they keep winning, if they keep proving it, I got to imagine these odds only shorten. So if you believe the Colts are real, and that they have greatest show on turf potential when it comes to longevity and actually winning a Super Bowl, you should bet it now. On the other side, I like the Rams. The Rams have the coach in Sean McVay. They have the quarterback in Matt Stafford. They have skill players in Puka Nacua. That is a team paired with a really strong defense that could reel off 4 straight playoff wins. The odds are just plus 1,000 though right now. 10 to 1 isn't bad, but unlike the Colts, I could see this Rams team being a 10-win, 11-win season and then going on that playoff run. And if that's the case, that means they're going to win some games and lose some games down the stretch. And when they lose, I could see those odds actually lengthening past 10 to 1. So if you really like the Rams, you might wait another week or two and see if those odds lengthen. I think you'll probably have another chance to get them at 10 to 1 later in the year. But I do like the Rams from this group. Now, as we move to our third tier, the Jekyll and Hyde Mafia. I hope I am not so old that this tier and this theme doesn't land with everybody who's listening. But these teams, like Jekyll and Hyde, they're one thing one day, one thing the next. They're either totally one-dimensional, like they're awesome on offense, nightmare on defense, looking at you Cowboys, or they seem to shapeshift as an entire team from week to week, looking at you home and away Panthers. Now, many of these teams have no realistic shot at winning the Super Bowl, and the odds largely accurately reflect that, in my humble opinion. But a couple of them do. Let's look at who's in this tier. At 13, we've got the Chargers. At 14, we've got the Steelers. At 15, we've got the Jags. Talk about a team that was Jekyll in the first few games and now seems Hyde all the time. We've got the Cowboys and the Falcons. The Falcons who lost 30-0 at Carolina on the road and then have been winning big at home. We've got the Giants who looked one way for 3 quarters last week and then looked like a completely different team and giving up 33 points to the Denver Broncos in a single quarter. We've got the Vikings who have looked like one team when Carson Wentz plays okay and another when he doesn't. We've got the Bengals, the Commanders, who are definitely on the Hyde side of things now with Jaden Daniels out for an undetermined amount of time. And then the Panthers, the Bears, the Saints, and the Ravens, who we'll get to in a second. For my money, the best of those teams to back with a Super Bowl bet this week would likely be the Bengals. They still have a path to winning the AFC North. They've shored up their biggest issue area by trading for Grandpa Joe Flacco. They could get Joe Burrow back for the last 2 to 3 games of the regular season. Joe Jr.? And that would be more than enough time to reacclimate and have the offense in peak performance for the playoffs. And look, they've done it before, not long ago. They made Super Bowl 56 just 3 years ago before falling to the Rams 23-20. And if they do win the Super Bowl, a $100 bet on the Bengals today returns a cool $20,000. Pretty good. Now, by contrast, the Ravens are plus 2,200. There is a reason why they are 25th in our power rankings. That feels really low to me. You bet $100 on the Bengals, you get $20K. You bet $100 on the Ravens right now, the 1-5 Ravens, you win $2,200 if they win it all. Look, Lamar still isn't back. Even if he comes back this week, it's probably going to take time for the offense to get back to full strength. And the defense is still a shell of itself. Talk about a value disparity between the Bengals and the Ravens. Now, as we move on to our last tier, we lovingly call this group of teams the showing their ass teams. Look, they're just plain bad. And they love to remind us of that week to week. It's the NFL. So even these teams are capable of throwing up a highlight every now and again, maybe getting a win you didn't expect. Look at the Carolina Panthers at the end of last year. They should have had the number one pick. They didn't because they pulled out a couple wins they shouldn't have pulled out. But let's be totally clear. Expectations are essentially zero for these teams week in and week out. And to that end, if somebody gave us $100 and put a gun to our head and made us bet that on one of these teams, the Texans, the Browns, the Cardinals, the Dolphins, ew, the Raiders, ooh, the Titans or the Jets, ugh. Well, I guess we would pick the Texans. Just in terms of odds, they have the shortest odds. They're plus 6,000 to win the Super Bowl. And look, some of you might look at that and say, Dennis, they're in the wrong tier. We wholeheartedly disagree after watching the Texans this year and being in the stadium on Monday night against the Seahawks. But if you want us to go in another direction, we would put that $100 on the cards in hopes that Arizona starts Jacoby Brissett the rest of the way and Marvin Harrison finds a way to stay healthy. Or we could just burn the $100. Same outcome either way, really. All right, that's all we've got for our power rankings. We will be back at you with updated power rankings in some number of weeks. No commitment on how many weeks, but as things shift and we feel like there is a worthiness to updating the rankings, we will do that for you. Moving on to Uncle Denny's Any Given Sunday Hunches. Last week was a good week for our Any Given Sunday Hunches, even though we did not get the sweep on Monday night, as the Bucs came up well short in virtually every regard at Detroit. Tampa couldn't rely on Emeka Egbuka as he was clearly not himself with that hammy injury. He still played, props to him, 4 catches, 53 yards, but it wasn't enough. And matters were made worse in the receiving corps when Mike Evans, who is trying to come back from injury himself and have his 12th straight record-breaking 1,000-yard season in a row, suffered both a concussion and a broken collarbone on the same play. Mike Evans' season is over. His 1,000-yard streak is over. He finishes tied with the wide receiver GOAT, Jerry Rice, in a record that may never be broken. Props to Mike Evans. A little sad that we didn't get to see him at least make a more valiant run at that record this year, but also happy to see Jerry Rice, truly the GOAT. People don't even seem to understand how much of a GOAT he was, stay in the top spot in at least one more record over time. Makes me feel a little young. The Bucs also couldn't stop the run like they're known to do. Jahmyr Gibbs ripped them to absolute shreds with 136 rushing yards on 8 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns, including a 78-yard score in the second quarter. All of that culminated in a 24-6 loss that brought Tampa back down to earth a bit. We are still confident in the Bucs this year, but we might wait to see how the receiving room shakes out a bit before we feel strongly enough about them to include them in hunches again in the coming weeks. Bucs aside, we did finish 2-1 on the week. We're 5-1 on the season thanks to the Pats and the Panthers, and we're looking to get back to our 3-0 ways this week with 3 very strong hunches for Sunday. And first up, we have a major hunch that Mike McDaniel finally gets fired after the Falcons smack the Dolphins by double digits in Atlanta on Sunday. As we've discussed ad nauseum, the Dolphins are without question one of the 3 or 4 worst teams in the entire NFL right now. Mike McDaniel has clearly lost everything there is to lose in Miami except his job. He's lost games, he's lost the locker room, he's lost the fans. His job is next. It's just a matter of when. And the issue in Miami, it's not just McDaniels and his ineffectiveness in coaching the team. The other most important situation in Miami, the quarterback situation, is a mess. As Tua entered the season a fragile asset with objectively more risk than upside at this point of his career. And suffice to say, the Tua situation has actually found a way to go from bad to decidedly worse over the last several weeks, with Tua calling out his teammates for their work ethic and film study, only to back that up with what has been the most atrocious two-game stretch of his career, including six interceptions. Even Justin Fields thinks that's bad. Should Mike McDaniel want to bench Tua? And certainly, many people are calling for that. The backup option is rookie Quinn Ewers in this game. We know now that Ewers was definitely the better option than Arch Manning at Texas last year. And that's more commentary on Arch than it is Quinn. But look, Ewers is not just a rookie. He's a 7th round draft pick. Yeah, Tom Brady and all that. Let's be real. Ewers is not somebody anyone with half a brain thinks is going to ride in and save the day against the Falcons. Devon Achane is a decent running back, but there is no depth behind him. And with the loss of Tyreek Hill, the Finns' once powerful passing game is going to get any sort of liftoff, is going to struggle to get any sort of liftoff in this game. Jaden Waddle be damned. You know how a hay bale can spontaneously combust. It actually starts to burn from within. You don't see it at first, and then eventually, whoosh, the whole thing goes up in flames. This feels like the up in flames week for Miami. Can Mike McDaniel turn the tide and keep himself employed for another week? I think not. And the Falcons, for their part, have played really well at home. I don't think they're going to make it easy for Mike McDaniel to escape the noose for another week. Setting aside Atlanta's season opening loss to the rival Bucs, 23-20, the Falcons have held serve at home in defeating both a healthy Washington Commanders team, 34-27, and beating Buffalo, 24-14. They also went on the road and beat Minnesota, 22-6. And they're 3-0 against the spread in those 3 wins. The Falcons are averaging 27 points per game and allowing just 20 at home against good opponents. Surely they should outperform both of those offensive and defensive scoring averages this weekend against a Miami team that has only beaten the Jets this year. Wait a second. Let's say that again. The only team Miami has beaten this year is the cellar-dwelling Jets. And they just got curb stomped 31-6. By the Browns, the Cleveland Browns, with a rookie QB. Hi, Dylan Gabriel. Go Ducks. Oh, and the one bright spot that Miami's had over the last few weeks, the return from retirement of tight end Darren Waller, that's over. He was placed on IR yesterday. In short, when the Falcons typically play well, they win. When they're at home, they typically win, even against good competition. This week, they're at home against a team that is not just terrible, but on the verge of self-immolation. Give me the Falcons to roll 31-13, easily covering the 7.5. In our second hunch of the week, we believe strongly that Grandpa Joe Flacco is going to keep the good times rolling in Cincinnati as a 6.5-point favorite at the expense of the one team as bad or worse than the Miami Dolphins, the Jets, Jets. You know, it almost feels unfair that we get the chance to bet on 2 talented offenses at home against 2 of the most incompetent dumpster fires in the entire league. But hey, here we are. Look, we like to joke about Grandpa Joe Flacco's age, but we love this move for Cincinnati dating back to when it was a mere rumor after Burrow first went down. Flacco has been every bit as effective and even more than we thought he would be, needing just 1/2 against Green Bay to acclimate to Cincy's offensive controls. And he followed the KISS, keep it simple, stupid philosophy when one has a talent like Jamar Chase. Feed that man until he cannot eat anymore. And boy, Joe Flacco has done just that. In 2 games, Jamar Chase has been targeted a whopping 35 times, resulting in 26 receptions for 255 yards and 2 touchdowns in 2 games. This gives me throwback Chicago Bears Jay Cutler, Brandon Marshall vibes. But unlike those Bears teams, this does not mean that he's made Cincy's offense one-dimensional. T. Higgins might well be the best number 2 wide receiver in the league, and in those same 2 games, Flacco has targeted Higgins 18 times, resulting in 11 receptions for 158 yards and 1 touchdown as a number 2 receiver, when Jamar Chase has 35 targets of his own. That's simply incredible. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Flacco's presence has only led to 1 win so far, last week at home against Pittsburgh. But that trade led Steelers coach Mike Tomlin to publicly shame Cleveland. And that one win last week single-handedly dropped Cincinnati's odds of winning the AFC North by 77%, from plus 2,000 to just plus 450. Cincy's offense is scary again. It doesn't matter that Flacco is 40. We're going to keep making jokes, but it doesn't matter. They're scary. And the defense is holding up well enough with 3 takeaways in the last 2 games to be a pro rather than a con. And on the Jets side of the fence, could things really be worse? I think not. The Jets owner, Woody Johnson, is publicly disparaging his quarterback, Justin Fields. Head coach Aaron Glenn seems totally in over his head. Fields, for his part, followed up a mind-boggling 45 gross, negative 10-yard net passing performance against the Broncos in London, with a 46-yard gross, 25-yard net passing performance at home against the Panthers on Sunday. Progress? Yikes. Now, Garrett Wilson might be back this week, but if you're Garrett Wilson, and I say this with all love as a Garrett Wilson fantasy owner, are you coming back and risking your health and livelihood for this nonsense? Probably not, unless you absolutely have to. And I do not think he absolutely has to. In his stead, the Jets' passing offense will once again rely on Josh Reynolds. Who? Yeah, I mean, we know who Josh Reynolds is, but he is a who guy. He got 3 catches last week on 9 targets. That is not good. 9 targets are great. If you're looking for a fantasy fill-in, I mean, you'll take 9 targets. But 3 for 9 is bad. And look, rookie tight end Mason Taylor has been great. Like, objectively great as a tight end. And so if you squint, you can see nothing. There's nothing there. I was just kidding. You're just squinting now when you don't have to. And poor Breece Hall, who we like at running back, also in a vacuum, he's going to be under a microscope in Cincinnati. Cincinnati's defense is not the best defense in the league, but the Bengals coaching staff knows damn well that taking Breece Hall out of this game essentially entirely cuts the legs out from under this Jets offense. And that's shown in the Jets results too. In their last 3 games, we saw them progressively decline in scoring offense from 22 against Dallas to 11 against Denver, and finally just 6 points last week against Carolina. The trend says they'll be lucky to get 3 in Cincy this Sunday. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt and give them 6. Bengals, 27-6, covering the 6.5. In our third hunch of the week, we are riding with the unbreakable San Francisco 49ers, 1.5 point favorites, as they storm into Houston to break the Texans. I looked at this and I thought, is this line really just 1.5 points in favor of San Francisco? I'll admit, I thought, are there more injuries in San Francisco than I realized? Is somebody not coming back who otherwise was? Checked, and the answer was no. So then I thought, is Houston just incredible at home and we missed that? Nope, not that either. They're 1-1 at home with a win over the lowly Titans. It's 26-0, so there's something to that, but we know they have a good defense. It was a decent win over a shit team. And then they lost 2019 to the Bucs, so a good loss to a good team, but a loss nonetheless. Their only other win came 44-10 at the Ravens in Cooper Rush's first start, and with seemingly every member of the Ravens defense out injured. That is nothing to write home about. And again, we were in the stadium last Monday night for the Seahawks' 27-19 win over Houston. The Texans clearly have talent and ability at all 3 levels of the defense. But their offense is a total mess. It's not that it's without talent. You can't say that. CJ Stroud had a great rookie year, but he's sucked since. And Nico Collins has looked really good in long spurts, at times even like a top 5 wide receiver. His fantasy draft position reflected that. But we haven't really seen any of the upside against a legitimate defense this year out of Houston. Collins, for his part, has not even practiced this week after suffering a concussion at Seattle. If he can't go on Sunday, how does Houston move the ball? It's just not a good recipe for Houston to score points against a very good Niner defense that's allowing just 16.4 points per game in their 5 wins. And as evidenced on Sunday night in holding Atlanta to just 10 points, this defense may keep losing guys to injury, but the next man keeps stepping up. Offensively for San Francisco, it sounds like we're going to get another week of Mac Jones, which I actually think might be better for the Niners in covering this spot than trying to reintegrate Brock Purdy this week. George Kittle is going to be here again this week. He didn't record a catch in his return last week, but make no mistake, he's a game-changing talent, and he should leave fingerprints on this game as he too gets back up to full speed. This could also be the week that Ricky Pearsall returns, adding another dynamic playmaker to the Niner offense. Even if he doesn't, the best receiver in San Francisco is running back Christian McCaffrey, who is 12th in the NFL in rushing yards with 465 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he's also currently 8th in the NFL in receiving yards, not just among running backs, but among all players, with 516 yards and another 3 touchdowns. McCaffrey is on track to surpass 1,000 yards through the air this year. And more importantly, he's uncoverable. Just like Jackson Smith and Jigba was last week against Houston, Christian McCaffrey will be that for the Niners on Sunday. At home, we expect Houston to keep this one tight for at least the first few quarters, but we don't expect them to pull out the win against a Niners team that has the better coaching staff, the better scheme, at most positions, the better players, and has a lot more to play for as a 5-2 team in the thick of the NFC West race than Houston. Simply put, this is a game that the Niners must win. This is a game that the Niners will win. Niners 2016 covering the 1.5. All right, those are our 3 hunches for the week. We feel great about going 3-0. We're definitely going to be putting some money behind all 3 of those this week, parlaying them together in hopes that we have another big one. And with that, let's move to around the NFL in our battle against Gerald the Quarter. As we mentioned in our Monday morning quarterback post, yes, that we published on Tuesday evening, we battled to a draw in our Around the NFL competition with Gerald last week. But we each finished 7-5, which is in the black. And we, 15-9 now, hold a 4-game lead over Gerald, who's 11-13 on the season. We're keen to stretch that further in week 8. Now remember, tails is away, heads is home for Gerald. We start in Los Angeles with the Vikings 3.5-point dogs at the Chargers. It is not clear if this is the week J.J. McCarthy comes back for the Vikings, but it sounds like it is the week that Aaron Jones Sr. returns, which will be a boon for Minnesota's offense so long as he doesn't immediately re-injure himself, which, of course, no guarantees on that because this is Aaron Jones Sr. we're talking about. We made the mistake of backing the Chargers last week, then watched LA get totally worked by the Colts. We don't love backing Wentz or McCarthy here, and we don't necessarily think the Chargers are going to drop their second straight game at home. But the extra half point pushing this above a field goal has pushed us onto the side of the Vikings. Chargers win, but Vikings cover. We've got the Vikings. Gerald takes the Chargers. Next on the docket, we go to Foxborough, where the Cleveland Browns are 6.5-point underdogs at the New England Patriots. And look, despite their 2-5 record, the Browns have admittedly been pretty plucky over the last couple of weeks with Dylan Gabriel under center. Go figure that. The Browns move Joe Flacco out, the offense gets better. The Bengals move Grandpa Joe Flacco in, the offense gets better. Win-win. Sometimes it seems people and teams just need a change of scenery. And while we give the Browns props for their recent uptick in performance, and we're certainly aware of and impressed with rookie Quinshon Judkins and the injection of life he's given to this Browns rushing attack, we're more impressed with what the Pats are doing. Cleveland lost by double digits at Baltimore, at Detroit, and at Pittsburgh. Mike Vrabel and Drake May's Pats are better than Pittsburgh, and right now at least, they're at least similar in potency to the Ravens pre the Lamar injury and the Lions. The Browns still have a good defense, so we don't expect this to be a super high-scoring affair. But we do expect the Pats to win and cover the number. We'll take the Patriots, Gerald takes the Browns. And from there, we scoot over to Philadelphia, where the New York Giants are 7.5-point underdogs at the Philadelphia Eagles. And really, how hard is it for anyone to take the Giants in this game, even with more than a touchdown's worth of points after what we all witnessed in Denver last week? It is hard. It is really, really hard. But we're still leaning G-Men in this one. That kind of loss either ruins a team, at least for a few weeks, or it galvanizes a team. I like the cut of Jackson Dart's jib, and I love the man, the myth, and the legend that is Cam Scadaboo. The front four is still nasty in New York, and this is an NFC East hate fest. Yes, the Eagles' offense finally looked awesome for long stretches last week against Minnesota, but I think the Giants find a way to stay in this game. Another one where Eagles win, Giants cover. I'll take the Giants. Gerald will take the Eagles. In our next matchup, we have the Buffalo Bills heading to Carolina as 7.5-point favorites. Oh, how interesting this game could have been had Bryce Young not gone down with that ankle sprain last week against the Jets. Alas, the home Panthers may not fully be the home Panthers this week with Andy Dalton at the helm of the offense. At the same time, we're still very unsure just how good Buffalo is right now. We obviously believe in their potential to have them in the legitimate contender tier of our power rankings, but like their performance in New Orleans earlier this year, this feels like a game the Bills will win, but perhaps not cover. And let's not forget, the Bills' normally stout run defense is just 31st in the NFL this year, allowing 159.3 yards per game after finishing 2024 12th. Assuming the Panthers do the right thing and prioritize Rico Dowdle's touches and game flow, the Panthers should hang in this one. Heck, they might even win it with Dalton. I'm going to take the Panthers plus 7.5, and Gerald is too. Next, we've got the Chicago Bears, 6.5-point underdogs at the Baltimore Ravens. Wait, you ask yourself, the 1-5 Ravens are 6.5-point favorites? That means two things. First, this is a kitchen sink game for Baltimore because if they lose this one, their season is realistically over. And second, lines makers must be expecting Lamar Jackson back in the lineup. We suppose it would be hard not to give Baltimore the full value of Lamar in the line should he play, but I'm not really sure that he's going to be anything close to 100%. If this wasn't a kitchen sink game for the Ravens, would they even consider bringing Lamar back in this spot? Meanwhile, the Bears are 4-2 under Ben Johnson and have quietly, somehow, some way, very quietly won 4 straight games, including 2 on the road. The Ravens are at home, yes, and they're getting a little bit healthier on defense, yes, at least if they do get Marlon Humphrey and Kyle Hamilton back this week in the secondary. But this is still not a great spot for Baltimore, all things considered. Bears cover and win? Give us the Bears. Gerald's taking the Bears too, plus 6.5. Next, we have the New Orleans Saints at home, 3.5-point dogs against Baker and the Bucks. We still believe in Baker and the Bucks, make no mistake. Maybe not enough to have a strong hunch about this potential bounce back spot at division rival New Orleans, but enough to get behind them in around the world this week. The Saints aren't bad. We've said that. Every pundit has said that. You know that. But they aren't good either. They're at home, so you'd expect them to be fresh and ready for this one, but the Bucks are the far better team here. They simply can't drop a game like this to Spencer Rattler if they are serious contenders for the NFC crown this year. I don't love the extra half point, but it's also not going to scare me into backing the Saints. Give me the Bucks. Gerald takes the Saints. In Denver, the Broncos welcome the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys are a 3.5-point underdog going into a strength-on-strength matchup with the Broncos. The Cowboys have one of the highest flying offenses in the league right now, and the Broncos have to be riding their own high coming off that epic and highly improbable comeback win over the Giants on Sunday. Maybe too high and prime for a letdown? Perhaps. Could that also apply to the Cowboys, coming off their own 44-22 win over the Commanders, in which they put Jaden Daniels out of the game and got to a true 500 at 3-3-1? I think this battle is going to come down to how well Patrick Surtain and the Bronco defense can slow Dak, George Pickens, and a Cowboy offense that not only has scored 29 points per game over the last 3, has not only averaged 250 passing yards and 3.5 passing touchdowns per game, but welcome back number one receiver CeeDee Lamb as well. Who is Patrick Surtain going to focus on taking out of this game? I suspect it will be Lamb, but then will the Broncos be able to also slow Pickens? And then on the offensive side of the ball, if Dallas even gets close to doing their thing, Bo Nix has his work cut out for him this week. Can't wait 3 quarters to turn it on. Give me the Cowboys on the road. Gerald's taking the Cowboys as well. All right, and in our next matchup, we have the Tennessee Titans, 14.5-point underdogs at the Indianapolis Colts. And boy, we hate these double-digit spreads. And to add the extra half point to the 2-touchdown line, oof. But look, the Colts are flying high right now. We've talked about that today. They crushed Tennessee 41-20 on the road already this year. Tennessee has gotten worse, not better, while the Colts have gotten better, not worse. The Colts have wins of 25-21, 34-14, 14 this year already. So winning big is not unfamiliar territory. In fact, you might confuse the Colts for the Hawks from the Mighty Ducks. It's not worth winning if you can't win big. Meanwhile, we'll remind you one more time. The Titans are terrible. Are we really going to zag here when the obvious move is to zig? No, we're not. All those points be damned. Give us the Colts. Give Gerald the Titans. And next, we have the Aaron Rodgers revenge game. The Packers, 3.5-point favorites, head to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Now, Aaron Rodgers has publicly stated that this is decidedly not a revenge game for him, which only means that this is very much a revenge game for him. And Aaron Rodgers aside, how weird is that dude? His comments last week, which the broadcasting crew relayed on multiple occasions about leaving the limelight and moving into the shadows for at least 4 years, that was really odd. But then it's also totally on brand for Aaron. You know what we're going to do? We are going to RELAX because this one is not as complicated as it seems. Rodgers and the Steelers are playing really sound football, and they're at home in one of the toughest, most inhospitable environments in the league. The Packers are Jekyll and Hyde, and I don't want any part of that this week. Give me the Steelers, give Gerald the Pack. All right, next we fly to Kansas City, where the Kansas City Chiefs are 11.5-point favorites against the Washington Commanders. First and foremost, Jaden Daniels is out for this game. Let's start there. Y'all know we love Marcus Mariota, go Ducks, but he is not the answer for Washington on the road at the hottest team in the league in Kansas City. We will save you the rehash of backing double-digit spreads. The Chiefs' offense is on fire. They're at home, and we think nearly a lock for 28-plus points with Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice and everything else around Patrick Mahomes. The Commanders do have some talent, but we believe the drop-off that we saw in Dallas last week when Daniels went out is real. As crazy as it sounds, the more we think about this, the more we think 11.5 points is a little trappy and maybe not big enough. Alas, we're on the Chiefs bandwagon. Give us the Chiefs, give Gerald the Commanders. That's all we've got for this week in NFL picks. May the betting gods bless you and be on your side. Thanks again, everyone. See you on the flip side.